before I was kind of everywhere trying to meet everyone's needs. And then when I said, no, this is me, this is my voice, I revamped my whole website. When I launched the book, everything kind of just started to circle around, this is what you're going to get when you schedule a session with me. I think I've gotten a lot more clients and a lot more just colleagues understanding, okay, this is what you do. This is the space that you hold for people.
This is Therapist Clubhouse, a podcast for private practice entrepreneurs. I'm Annie Schusler. This week, I'm talking to Mercedes Samudio, a private practice entrepreneur in Los Angeles, California. In this conversation, we dive into what it was like to write her book, Shameproof Parenting, the differences between coaching and therapy, and much more. Welcome, Mercedes. Welcome to Therapist Clubhouse.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I want to talk to you about your entrepreneurial journey. You have a private practice and you're an author. Your book, Shameproof Parenting, just came out this year. Mm-hmm. How and when did you decide it was time to write a book?
That is a great question. I think one thing that came about is that I realized that I had been saying a lot of stuff over a lot of different medias and channels. And I just felt I need a concise place for all of these ideas to feel whole. And so when I was thinking about that, of course, an ebook came up. But then I thought, I feel like I would love for other people to also understand this. And I feel like I would like for this to be my message for the rest of my entrepreneurial journey, for the rest of my business. And so the idea of actually doing a physical book that is on Amazon that people can physically have in their hands, as well as if they want it electronically, they can have it that way, just kind of began to flourish. And then around the time that I had that idea, you know how you're on the internet and stuff comes up on your social media profiles. My book coach's profile came up and I was like, oh, well, this is all very serendipitous that I'm thinking about it. And here, Facebook is always in your brain, knowing exactly what ads to show you. It was there. And I feel like all of those things just lining up, it made me feel like, okay, this is maybe the time that I should maybe consider actually doing this.
And was working with a coach really helpful?
It was literally the only reason why the book got out. I can say that. I feel like, again, like I said, I had all these ideas. I had written blogs and I had been on Huffington Post and I had done all of these podcasts, but still I hadn't set myself down and got disciplined enough to put all these ideas together in a concise, organized way. And so I feel like my book coach was able to help me organize all of my ideas so that way I can put a book together.
And what was it like writing your book and publishing and promoting it?
Writing it was a very enlightening journey. I have been telling a lot of colleagues, and I'll share here, that I feel like writing a book is definitely a parallel process that I feel like I've had with my clients, where you are changing, you are learning, you are growing, and you're being pushed. My book coach and then the editing process really pushed me to learn how to articulate, to learn how to share my views and to understand what those views meant, not just in my head and how I thought they sounded, but having someone else who doesn't know me read my words and tell me, don't really get it, kind of don't understand what you're saying. What do you mean by this? And to sit with that discomfort of someone not understanding the brilliance that's circling in your head,
Yes.
So, I feel like it was definitely this parallel process that actually allowed me to be hold a lot more space for that discomfort in my work with my clients, where I could see that pushing someone is hard. Telling someone that they've got to move forward or they've got to learn how to share their views in a different way, it's difficult because I went through it myself. And so I think, to answer your question, I feel like what it felt like was growth. It felt like really coming into not just my voice, but also my life goal and my life work by writing this book.
Oh, wow. That's a big deal. I had not expected that answer, but it makes so much sense. So it's not just because you think you have something to say, you want to write a book, but I haven't done it yet, so I have no idea what it's like, but I'm getting that it's not just sharing your ideas, but really clarifying them and going deeper into them.
And that's one reason why I really feel like having a book coach is not just to have someone be my project manager and do all of the project management stuff. the book coach that I used, and I can't speak for everyone, but the one that I used really understood the author's process and really pushed me in our weekly calls. As I would write things and she would read that, she would say, is this really what you want to say? And are you sure this is how you want to say it? And she's a mother as well. Mm-hmm. So, we talked a lot about parenting. And as I was sharing my ideas with her, she was challenging and saying, well, is this what you say to all families? And what would you say if this was this type of family? And she would give me examples of her own family and say, is this what you would say to me? Mm-hmm. And I had to really say, okay, how would I say this? How would I present this? In my head, I think, oh, I've got it. When we're in our showers, I got the solution. Mm-hmm. But when you're really having to write it, have other people look at it, have other people critique it, it really makes you hone in on what do you actually want to say about this particular issue.
Mm. And then what was it like getting your book out there and promoting it and sharing it with the world?
Yeah, I definitely did not expect people to care. That's for sure. I definitely put it out there and I thought, well, yeah, a couple of my colleagues who knew me, they would support me and that'd be nice. And family would, of course, be supportive. So it was very scary to put it out there. But it was scary in the sense where I was like, what if people don't care about it? It wasn't like, what if people like it? Mm. So for people to have responded to it and to have told me that they've read it or to say that, they've seen their clients read it. One of my colleagues told me that they came out the other day and their client was actually reading it and she had not even mentioned it to them. They just had it. It was one of those moments where it was like, oh,
wow.
People care. So I think putting it out there definitely is a very scary moment because, like I said, going through the process, I really honed in on what I wanted to say. I really honed in on what I wanted my life's work to be. So to put that level of vulnerability out there, it's like, well, what if other people don't care about your life's work? And what if other people don't, resonate with what you're saying? And so there was a lot of fear of that because you're putting out your real self. You're putting out your authentic self. And in the beginning of my book, I share my story about why, as someone who is not a parent, I am doing this work. I am writing a parenting book. And that was also a vulnerable piece because I had never shared or been that much. I had never shared that much about my story to anyone other than close family and friends. So,
yeah. And you go really deep and personal in your book. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how did you decide you did want to do that?
I didn't at first. That was not the introduction at first. It was very pedantic and welcome to the book. And we're going to talk about all these pedantic things. And I remember one of the last writing sessions before we moved into editing, I was like having just writer's block. And I was like, I don't know what else to say. And I need some other things. And my book coach said, why don't you just do some free writing? Don't even worry anymore about what's going into the book. Just give yourself some time to do free writing. And it was a technique she had taught me early on, but I kind of felt like I moved past it because I was in the throes of writing. But then I had this writer's block where I couldn't figure out what to say for a certain chapter. And so she offered that. She said, just do some free writing. And I did it. And that introduction came out where I just wrote about, why am I doing this? She didn't tell me what to write about, but in my head, I was just like, why am I doing this? What am I really trying to do? And it came from that. And it's funny that that's the story that came from it because I have a lot of stories from my childhood, but I feel like that was one of those stories where I was like, this is why I was put on the path that I was on. This is why I went and got my degree in psychology. This is why I struggled through the licensing process. This story is why. And so I wrote it and I put it in our Google Doc for her to, kind of just see because I was writing it. And she said, so how do you feel about this being your introduction? And I was like, that was just supposed to be free writing. And she helped me rework it in a way that felt authentic. It wasn't just a journal entry, so to speak, but it was a way that kind of led into Shameproof parenting. And after she helped me rework it, I realized this has to be it. I can't introduce this book any other way. This has to be it. And here we are, that is the introduction.
And I'm just imagining that makes the reader, I mean, I know for me, like it makes the reader feel like they can trust you. They know where you're coming from. And it's not just you as the clinical social worker, but as the human being.
Right. And I had shown up like that for a long time because it was a good boundary. It was a good defense mechanism. I talk about that in my book a lot, but it was a good way to say, when people would say, well, you're not a parent. Well, I went to school, and I know things, and I think I was distancing myself from my own story because I didn't know how to have that show up in my life. I didn't know how to reconcile that with the person I was today, the girl who had that happen to her with the woman who I was. I didn't know where that could kind of connect. And so I think putting that out there allowed me to start to connect back with her as woo-woo as that might sound, it allowed me to connect back to I'm still her, but I've grown and I've healed, and I don't have to hide her. I don't have to put her behind all these barriers because she is something to be shameful of or to be ashamed of. Because of those experiences, because I went through that, this is why I have the heart and the passion that I do for this work. And so to be able to have that be the reconciling factor, I think feels really healthy at this point in my life than it did maybe, 4 or 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago when I started my business.
And so you were ready to step into it and to step into being a leader in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you're a licensed clinical social worker and you offer parent coaching.
Yes.
What do you see as the difference between coaching and therapy?
What I see as the main difference is that with coaching, you're really kind of in the maintenance phase. If you think about the 3 phases of therapy, you're not doing that deep work anymore. You're really working with people who are ready to kind of now maintain the level of healing that they have come through from their deeper work. So when I'm working with my parents, these parents who have maybe not done the deeper work, I'm very much into saying, let's do it as a parallel process, or have yourself do that deep work and then come back to the coaching. Because my parents who have done the deep work, who have really gotten into who they are, what their identity is, and what it means for them to be here in this space in their role as a parent, they're able to begin those coping skills. They're able to really bring Shameproof parenting into their life. And for my parents who haven't done that deep work yet, it's harder because they're not just contending with their parenting identity, but they're contending with all their past stuff that they've never really given space to. And so I've definitely done a lot of work with parents where they either have got their work and then come back, or I'm doing it parallel with them where the parent is getting their deep work and I'm also kind of helping them also reconcile that with their parenting identity. And so I find like that's the best kind of understanding of coaching, that I'm not doing deep work, but I'm helping people maintain that healing from the deep work they've already done.
Okay, great. And when you're doing coaching, are you meeting with people over video or over phone, or how are you doing that?
Yeah, both. So video, phone, with clients I've had for a longer time, we might even be able to text message every now and then because I know more about what's going on with them, so we can have those type of conversations. But yeah, it's definitely that kind of flexibility of them meeting me where they are as a coach. So they don't have to come into the office. I don't have to really go to them because we're not doing deep work. We're doing that work where it's like, okay, you've done the work. Now let's maintain it. Let's see what you can do to keep that healing there, or to further your healing by now seeing that you don't have to go back to those old coping skills. You don't have to go back to those old ways of addressing issues.
And I'm thinking too, like new things are always coming up. And so it's like, I'm imagining that in coaching, someone might say, okay, I've been doing really well, but now this is happening.
Yes. Yes.
So help me get back on track.
Yes. Yeah. And it's that idea of how do we recognize where our triggers are, and how do we recognize that our life is just going to be full of triggers. So being really aware of yourself, being really aware of what in your environment really triggers you. And as a parent, I think it's really important to do that because your kids are also starting to come into what triggers them and what makes them, a person. And so as you become aware of it, you can hold more space for them. The more I tell my parents, the more aware you are of your triggers, the more space you'll have for your child discovering theirs, and for the first, probably 15 to 16 years, you're going to be their major trigger. So it's really important
That's so true.
that you know what triggers feel like, that you know what management feels like, because your kid is going to push up against you for a really long time because there's no one else who's their main influence. There's no one else in their life who's in their life 24/7, right? So I think that's why it's so important to do coaching in any way, because when your triggers come up, even if you've done that deep healing, you need to remember, okay, I've healed through this. So what do I do now? I know what this is. Now what do I do? Right? Yeah. It's one thing to know what it is, and it's another thing to then say, okay, what do I do now? I know why I'm upset. I know why I'm so triggered. Now what do I do?
Yeah. And how do I do it better? And then also I'm thinking so I have an 8-year-old and a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
And I noticed that whenever they get to a new age or stage, then it really brings up everything that I was going through at those ages. And so that even if they're not completely doing something new, there's a lot going on just watching our kids grow.
I agree 100%. And that's why I think the work that I do with Shameproof parenting and identify and learning how to identify who you are as a parent is so important, because as a parent, your role and your identity is going to be different, obviously, than your child, because they don't have that identity yet. They're coming into all their different identities at different ages. So every age to them is literally a new identity that they're trying on. So you're watching them do this, and you've already passed that identity. You've already done the 14-year-old identity. You've already done the 8-year-old identity.
Yes.
And so watching them go through it, I think is triggering, because you are now being reminded of how you went through that piece of your life. But I think coaching, and what I do in coaching, is helping parents to reconcile that, helping parents to realize I'm watching my 8-year-old do things that when I was 8, I did or didn't do, right? And helping them understand why that looks that way. If you don't mind me giving an example, one of the main examples I have is a lot of times parents who come from maybe more difficult childhoods, by the time they were their kids' age, they knew how to do a lot more independent stuff than their kid knows how to do.
Oh, yeah.
Because you had to. So by 8, and I don't know if this is your example or not, but what I see in a lot of families is by 8 or 9, people knew how to get on the bus. They knew how to get to school. They knew how to do their own laundry. They knew how to cook and clean. They knew how to take care of a whole home because they had to, because whoever was caring for them at the time couldn't do that for them. However, you have created a new home where you do all of that. You have made sure that your child didn't have to. They could learn by watching you, but it wasn't mandatory that your kid knew how to cook and clean yet. So at 8, you might say, hey, fold up your clothes. But for them, they're like, well, I've never had to, because you've created a different environment for them. And so in coaching, I help kind of reconcile that, how the environment you've chosen to create in your parenting identity for your child is different than the environment your caregivers chose to create for you. And how do you manage that? How do you deal with that?
Yes. I could just imagine you pointing out a million things like that is so helpful in just helping your clients understand what's going on.
Giving them the space to explore what's going on. That's literally how I feel as a coach. It's not about telling you what to do. It's saying, let's open up this space and let's just dump everything in there and see what's going on. Let's just see, and I really enjoy doing that, because I think, again, if you've done the deep work, that doesn't feel as defensive. It doesn't feel as scary. Okay, let's just dump, and then we can kind of sort through.
Yeah. And just say, oh, that's what's going on. Yeah. What do you like to have in your practice right now as a balance between the different kinds of work you do?
So right now, I just solely do parent coaching. So in 2015, I transitioned. So I no longer do family therapy. I actually refer out when families need therapeutic interventions. And then I solely now just work with parents. So very rarely do I meet with the children unless the child is old enough to kind of partake and be a part of that coaching relationship. But most of my kids aren't, because they're going through their own identities and they're learning. So I don't want them to be coached. I would rather them have their own space to develop and grow. Whereas I have my parents coach. I kind of give, again, it sounds just like, what it sounds like, where I'm giving them a play-by-play. I'm giving them like a coach would do for a big game. They would say, okay, this is what's going to look like. You're going to be here, they're going to be there, and these are the things you can expect. And then we kind of play around on that playing field. We play around with who's going to be what, position today, and how this ball is going to go up and down the field today. And I feel like it gives my parents just kind of that respite to say, I don't have to have all the answers. They can play around with me for an hour or 45 minutes and say, well, what if I did this? Well, what if I did that? What if I did this? I don't know. I would do this. And just kind of play in that and see, how does it feel to change up some of the plays you're using in your family? And I stay with the sports analogy because I use that one a lot. But this idea of, how can I just kind of play in this human fluidity without feeling like I'm going to damage everyone and feel like I should be so ashamed for not having the right answer for my child or for myself. And I think that space just helps parents to be more ready for whatever their kids do throw at them.
I know when I saw that you call your work Shameproof Parenting, just the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, yes, like that feels so good to a parent. And I'm wondering, like, do people come to you already feeling like they are a little bit less defensive?
Yes, actually, I do find that, especially now since I've come into my own with this whole idea. I think before I was kind of everywhere trying to meet everyone's needs. And then when I said, no, this is me, this is my voice, I revamped my whole website. When I launched the book, everything kind of just started to circle around, this is what you're going to get when you schedule a session with me. I think I've gotten a lot more clients and a lot more just colleagues understanding, okay, this is what you do. This is the space that you hold for people. And I chose shame-proof over shame-free because I don't really believe that we can ever get to a place where we're shame-free, because society is constantly changing. Society is constantly shifting. The issues we're dealing with now in the parenting framework will look totally different when your children become parents or make that choice to be parents. They'll have a whole nother slew of societal norms and societal expectations that will cause them to question themselves and worry about what they're doing. So I was thinking it's more important for parents to be shame-proof, to really kind of create almost like a bulletproof jacket for where when I do get hit with these bullets of shame and guilt, that it doesn't take me out completely, but it alerts me to, okay, something's wrong here. I'm going to need to go back home and regroup. I'm going to need to go back into my parenting identity and figure this out, right? There's no such thing as being shame-free, but people are going to shoot those shame bullets at you because they don't understand your family and they don't understand what you guys are going through. And I don't want that to make you feel like you are failed and you should just give up. But I want you to realize, okay, something is wrong here. If I felt so triggered by that teacher's comments, if I felt like I was going to strangle my sister-in-law for what she said, I need to go back and I need to look at what am I doing and how am I connecting with myself and my child.
Yes. So how many sessions do you like to have every week in your practice?
It really varies. I mean, I'm very open. I do a lot of other things now that I've kind of launched the book. It's opened up a lot more opportunities for me. So I'm just very open to, as woo-woo as it sounds, whatever the universe thinks I need for that week. I have clients who come weekly. I have clients that are bi-weekly. I have clients that go on vacations and I don't see them for a while. And I'm very open to where parents need to be. I'm here. The relationships I build with my clients are always very safe. So they know that if they're gone for like a year, I'm okay with you coming back and saying, hey, we thought we figured it out, but we're back. It's like, no worries. Let's talk, I've definitely had clients that I worked with for a period of time. They've gone on to figure out if they can do it on their own. And then, of course, life hits them again and their child goes through another shift and they need more support. And I'm always here. So I say that to say that I don't have a set number of like, I need to have 10 sessions a week. I need to have whatever the universe thinks I need to have. And I need to hold the space for whatever parents need the space that week. Like I'm really free with that and open with that.
I like that. And then I'm imagining that means that you have some weeks that are a lot busier than others, which I think that's a lovely thing about coaching.
Yeah.
For the coach. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even have packages anymore. Like I used to be like, okay, 10, sessions. And I was just like, you come as you need. And that, again, that's the thing that I do love about coaching, where it's like, you come as you need. We work during that 45 or that hour session that you have, and then you take what you need. And I always say at the end of every session, take what you need, leave what you don't, work on what you have the capacity to work on. And if you need me again, I'm here. Make another appointment. And I think that freedom allows my parents just to feel like, okay, I don't have to do all the homework and I don't have to meet Mercedes' expectations. You don't. I'm not at home with you and your family. I never will be at home with you and your family. So you meet the expectations that you have. You meet the goals that you think are most important and prioritizing in your life. And then when you need to meet another goal, I'm here. Come on back,
Yeah. And I think that it gives them then like one less thing that they feel like they can be doing wrong. Yeah. Have a lot of people found you through your book?
Yes. Yeah. My website has always been kind of a good generator because I write blogs and I did video blogs for a long time. So that was always something that kind of, I showed up on people's radars. But I think the book also did something where it wasn't just people finding me, but it was also colleagues understanding my work, the colleagues who read. And so they were able to now refer because they understood what they were referring their clients for. And so I think that helped a lot too.
And what's your fee? What are your fees for your coaching?
$180 for a 45-minute session and $200 for a 60-minute session.
Wonderful. How do you feel about your fees?
I feel like they're reasonable in terms of they help me feel connected to my business identity, where I feel like I'm not shafting my business. But then I also think that they feel good for families who are ready to do that work. It's like, okay, I'm ready. We will make this investment once, twice, 3 times, however many times you want to do that. And it feels reasonable. It feels like a nice balance for both.
How do you do you have any contact between sessions, like emails or anything like that?
Yeah. So a week after every session, you have email and text communication.
So smart. Yeah. So that they can follow up on anything that's like, wait, what did you say? Or how do you? Yeah.
And every, because I do sessions via teleconference software, I record every session. So whether they call in or they do video, I'm able to record the session. So I always send them a recording of the session. So if, again, over the week, they're like, what did she say? They can always go back and listen and hear some of the techniques or some of the skill sets that we talked about and try to incorporate it as best they can.
That's lovely. I do that too for my coaching sessions. And I'm sure some people never listen again, but I've heard from some people that it's just so helpful to be able to listen to themselves and listen to what happened again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like recordings too, because then they don't have to spend the session trying to write down everything. They can just really stay present because they know they'll get the recording. So they can really stay present. They can really kind of stay in, this is what I'm feeling and this is what I'm needing. And they don't have to say, okay, wait, write it down and then come back. They don't have to take themselves in and out of the conversation so much.
That's such a good point. And what kind of video conferencing do you use?
Right now I use Zoom.
Me too. Yeah. And have you ever had a low or scary moment in your business?
Have I? You mean, when was the last one? Is that what you meant? I think I've had two different types. So I've definitely had the financial lows where you're like, oh, I need to get a real job. What am I doing with my life? What is this entrepreneurial thing I thought I was trying to do? And I've definitely had the emotional ones where I wasn't sure if this was my calling. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be doing this because maybe you just had a series of clients that just weren't working and they just were not able to stay connected and they were dropping and terminating and you just felt maybe I shouldn't do this. And I think I have those kind of interchangeably. I would say maybe once or twice a year where I wonder, am I supposed to be doing this? Financially, I'm not able to do what I thought I was supposed to do. And what is happening here? And maybe I don't know what I'm doing. And I've had definitely moments where I wasn't able to meet my own maybe impossible expectations for helping families. And so when I can't meet that expectation, feeling like maybe I shouldn't be doing this, who do I think I am? Maybe I need to just go to Starbucks and put an application and just stop all this, And so I've had both, I think. And I say that not to be vague, but just to say like,
I just want to say, I so appreciate you speaking to both of those and especially speaking to that feeling of like, oh my gosh, am I helping people? Because I think, it's like shame-proof clinical work that the fact that you're talking about that. And I think so many of us can not want to talk about that, not want to shed light on it.
Yeah.
But I also know that everybody goes through it.
We do. We do.
Yeah. And so how do you think you're able to get through both of those different kinds of low moments?
The financial piece I get through by actually looking at my money and not ignoring it. That usually gives me a really realistic picture of what's happening. And it's hard. I think, I have my own money story, as I'm sure most people do. So I wasn't always taught how to manage money. I wasn't always taught what to do with money. And I also had some really kind of dysfunctional ways of connecting with money. So I would sometimes catastrophize it and then actually look at my finances and realize it wasn't at all as bad as I thought it was and that I was doing better. So that helps a lot with the financial piece. And then with the emotional piece, reaching out, which again, with a dysfunctional childhood, you get taught very quickly, don't reach out, figure it out on your own. If you can't figure it out, you're not strong. And I've had to really reset a lot of that and say, I need to reach out. I need to text a colleague. I need to go to coffee with somebody. I need to have a wine night with a group of friends. I need to not cancel on my best friend and actually go over and hang out. And so I think in those emotional moments, it's just getting out of that, not sitting in my office saying by myself, it's saying, get up, go do something, go text somebody. I have a couple of colleagues where I'll just text and say, oh my God. And they're right there. Yes, I have a client right now, but call me back in an hour. And in those moments, I realize that it's like, okay, this is how I'm going to get out of it. If I just stay at home and stew in it, I'm never going to get out of it. But if I just reach out just to those few people who I really feel connected to, they will help me to realize I'm not alone. We'll talk about those moments that maybe we don't talk about as publicly. They'll say, oh girl, I had the same thing happen to me with my client yesterday. And it's like, okay, good. I'm not the only one who feels like I'm not helping, and it feels validating. It feels safe. And I think that's how I consistently am able to maintain my practice and not close down, and just say it's over and go to Starbucks, because I constantly have kind of that space of, I have to reset these old stories that tell me to isolate and hide. I have to reset that and get out there into the world and say, I need support.
Yeah. And like when we speak the things that might feel like self-doubt or shame or any of that, they lose so much power.
They do. They do. Especially when you realize you're not alone. And that's something that I talk a lot about in the book. I think there's a whole section where I talk about your Shameproof parenting village, where it's like, it's so easy to sit at home and think you're the only parent with an 8-year-old who won't go to bed. And not saying that should, you should invalidate that, because your experience is yours, even if another mother is going through it. But the idea that somebody else is also going through this, and that there may be a space for you to get support, and there may be a space for you to just dump and say, and not be alone. I think even in those moments, even if someone doesn't have the solution for you, it still feels like, okay, I'm not alone. You might not be able to tell me what to do, but you also stayed up all night. Okay. All right. It's like, I'm not alone in this. And I think that works as an entrepreneur as well. And as a clinical person, to also be able to talk to other people who feel like all their training still doesn't get them through a whole session sometimes, because some people it's just hard to connect to some of your clients. So all of those moments are just very validating.
Yeah. Getting your village, finding, like I have a consult group that I go to every Friday afternoon, and we help each other with cases, and, we talk about our clinical work, but we also just rely on each other emotionally. Right. I think that's probably at least half of what we get out of it.
Because we're still human. I think that's something that, you learn when you become a parent, but you also learn when you become a clinician, you're still human. So yes, you have this identity that you're in when you're in session or when you're with your children, but at the end of the day, you're still a human, and you still need that emotional support to keep moving through whatever barriers come up in these different identities.
Do you have any tips or experiences with finding balance between your business and the rest of your life?
That's a great question. I think I'll go with what happened to me this year and what I did. And this year, I finally found that balance for myself. And that was because I stopped separating them. I learned how to integrate them. I stopped putting my personal over here, my business over here, thinking that neither affected the other. And I realized that so much of who I was as an entrepreneur was showing up in my life as a personal, as a wife, as a friend. And I realized that so much of my personal growth was starting to show up in my business and what I really wanted to do and how I really wanted to change the world. And so I worked with a coach who does this work, this integration work, and helped me to realize that you can have both. You don't have to disclose everything to everybody, but you definitely can have this integration of your full self, where you don't have to be a business person and then a personal, wife. You don't have to do those things. You can have them both. And so even though sometimes it gets muddy and messy and doesn't always feel as fun, I think when I decided not to make them two separate identities, they felt more balanced. They felt more in alignment.
Oh, nice. And do you work from home?
I do.
Yeah. And I do too, except for one day a week when I do therapy. But I think that something you said about the integration and how being one person in both places, it feels like working from home, at least for me, that's particularly important.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And I think, like I said, it can get messy when you're working from home, because everyone just says, oh, you're at home. And it's like, well, I have hours where I'm working and I have hours where I'm at home. So let's set those limits and those boundaries. But again, still, it's this idea of sitting through that mess, and I give Rebecca Wong a lot of praise for giving me that perspective of sitting through the mess and not being scared of it. But it's sitting through those murkier moments and not feeling like you have to separate them so that way you don't have any mess. It's like, put them together, integrate them, and sit through the discomfort of what it looks like to have both your personal and your business life be a part of you 24/7.
Yeah. Mercedes, if you could time travel to the start of your private practice, what would you tell the Mercedes of that time?
I would say, keep going. You're on the right track. I wouldn't give her any tips, because I think she needed to go through all that stuff to get here today on this day. But I would say, keep going. You are on the right track. Just keep going. That's what I would tell her.
Excellent. That's so true and so frustrating, isn't it? Like we just have to go through it.
It is. Like I can't imagine where I'd be if I went back in time and told her everything that would have messed up. I'm sure she would have been like, you're right, Mercedes from 2017. I will get a Starbucks application. I'm not doing it. I would have messed up the whole life,
Right. Even like, I'm thinking, like, I kind of don't even want you to tell me how much time it took you to write your book because
I don't mind telling you.
Because I'm saying because then I won't want to write one.
Okay.
Like there's so many things like that, or even creating a podcast. Like you kind of don't want to know how much work it's going to take, even though it's all completely worth it.
I agree. I
agree. But no, I
sense.
am really curious. How long did it take you to write your book?
Because I work with a book coach, it took me from September of last year to December of last year to write the book.
Oh,
so 4 months, 5 months.
So you worked really intensely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, I will say it's because I had a book coach. I think if I was on my own, it would have taken longer because I wouldn't have had the same like limits and kind of work to do. But every week I had a goal, and she was there to kind of coach me through that goal and make sure that I met the word count and met the kind of what we were doing. So I think that helped a lot. Yeah.
Great. Will you help me out with a listener question?
Sure.
Listener question.
Okay, so this person says, I work with parents and children, and I would like to try public speaking to build my practice. How can I find places to speak?
That is a great question. The kind of concise answer is wherever you want to speak, pitch. Mm-hmm. So if you've ever thought, I want to speak here, pitch. The more kind of, I guess, detailed answer would be to find out where your people are. So if you work with parents, where are the parents you want to help? Where are they? Are they at schools? Are they at religious organizations? Are they at business organizations? Where are they? And pitch to them and figure out, kind of what their needs are. That's something that I always do when I email. I'll email and say, hey, this is what I do. This is my, my press kit, all this stuff. What are your needs of your community? And I'll usually get a couple of people come back and say, oh, we have social media issues, or, our teens are really getting into sexting and we don't know what to do. And the last couple speaking gigs I had were from that, just pitching to people, just saying, hey, I'm here. This is what I do. And then people telling me, this is what we need. And if you're a coach or a parenting expert who talks about this, can you come? And so I would say, start there. Start looking at what do you talk about? Look at where the parents are that you want to meet and you want to help, and then just start letting those organizations know that you're available and you're ready to speak.
Mm-hmm. So it's really coming at it from how can I serve you? Mm-hmm. How can I serve your organization? Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Trust me, there are a lot out there that need support. And if they just know you're there, they'll tell you what they need. They'll let you know, we need this. Thank you for emailing us. I'll say this. The honest part is that a lot of people won't email you back. And that can be daunting sometimes to send a lot of emails and to do a lot of pitches and to go out and pass your cards out and your brochures out. But and I'm ballparking, out of the 100 ones you do, the 20 that do say, hey, come on in, you've done that. And to know that and to not let that discourage you. You will get a lot of people who just don't have the budget, or they don't have the time, or they don't know where to fit you. And that's okay. But to keep going out there and saying, how can I serve? What do you need? And just to kind of keep doing it. Like I said to my younger self, keep going. You're on the right path. Like keep going,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that you gave the numbers of 120 so that it's like if someone just, let's say, pitched 4 times and they felt like, oh, that was so hard and no one called me back. You're saying if it's 1 out of 5, think about that. Like keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going. Yeah.
And then once you've done more public speaking, then you also have this list of topics that you can let people know that you've already spoken on.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Can I share another tip for that
Please,
too?
Yeah.
I've noticed too that people use the internet the same way we do as consumers. And so be available there too. Mm-hmm. So, if you have a website, have a speaking page where someone can look you up, even if you haven't had speaking before, putting up what topics you tend to speak about, putting up your expertise and your skill set. If you're on social media, sharing it, talking about your blogs or sharing stuff, because people use the internet the same way you do. And just like every now and then you'll Google and somebody's page will come up and you'll call them. People do the same thing. They're looking for people. They're saying, okay, who can talk about social media? Who can talk about, children with anxiety? And if your stuff comes up, then you're one of the options they have to call or email. Also, when you pitch them, I know this for a fact, when you pitch people, they will also look you up to see, are you someone they should have at their organization? So just kind of having, even if it's not a huge presence, just having a website or just having a page up where people can see you and get to know you without necessarily talking to you, it gives that person, the organizer or whoever is over the speaking engagements and events, a little bit about, okay, I should call this person. I should email them back. So that kind of is another caveat to it. Like, don't be afraid to have a space on the internet.
I was so smart, and to look at your website through their eyes and think about what it looks like. That's great. Mercedes, what's the best place for therapists to find you and throw compliments at you?
I love it. I guess the best place to start is my website, shameproofparenting.com. And on there, you can find links to my book. All of my social media links are there. I am all over the internet. So if you type in Shameproof Parenting, you'll find me. But that's probably the best place to start.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Here's a question to chew on.
Question to chew on.
Do you want to give a talk? If so, where would you give a talk? If you're not sure, just like Mercedes said, ask yourself, where are my right fit clients hanging out, going to talks? Reach out to your friends and colleagues to get ideas of organizations to pitch a talk to. Step into that pitching process with openness and intention to serve and no attachment to the outcome. Remember what Mercedes said about expecting many or even most of the organizations you reach out to not to get back to you. It's normal and it's just part of the process. Thanks for listening to Therapist Clubhouse. If you haven't already, go and grab my free private practice strength assessment to find out what you need to do next in your business. Just go to coachingwithannie.com and right there on the homepage, you'll grab the assessment. You'll answer 15 multiple choice questions and then get a sense of how you're doing in 5 different areas of your practice. I'll see you next week. And I'm going to edit out that part where I said, I don't know what to say. Isn't that a great thing about podcasting?
Yeah, 100% the great thing about it.